All right, welcome back to the show. It's Christine Jewell, and we are on the Breaking Chains podcast. And today I'm bringing you guys another great guest. You know that I'm always on the lookout for impact driven leaders who are zigging when everybody else is zagging, who are committed to doing things a different way. I think we are called to be leaders that when people look at us, they go, "What is it about you? What is it about the way that you're leading your team, your family that's different?" And that's the key. So today I'm joined by Josh Schaver. Josh Schaver is the COO of Logan Ag. He's a father of 4, soon to be 5 in May. So depending on when this drops, he's a husband. I have had the privilege of working with Josh through some of our coaching containers, our summit container, our leader summit. And what I love about Josh is he is really somebody that I believe like walks the talk that he talks. I know sometimes that's hard shoes to fill, but also a leader who not only invests in himself, but invests in the team and actually implements the work. There's a lot of people that go to masterminds, to events, to things, and they chew up the meat for themselves, but that's all they're doing is they're feeding themselves. So I'm excited about today's conversation and just see what Josh has to share with you guys. So Josh, welcome to the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Christine, for having me. I'm excited to have the conversation. Looking forward to it.
Yes, and we're going to share this with all of your team members so they can
Yep.
see the wisdom that's getting passed on. So Josh, give us a little bit of a background story. Just who are you? I've told a little bit, but you know, who's Josh? Who's the man behind the black cap over there?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in a small town, a little rural agriculture town called Erie, 1,600 people. So it was very small community. Everybody knew everybody's business, but it was a very tight knit community as well. A lot of my values and my life was shaped, in that little bitty community. From there, went on to college at Monmouth College, met my wife there, and through a series of events, ended up moving down to where she's from in Beardstown, Illinois. And from there, we started my career at Logan Ag Service. Been here for 15 years now. Um, Over the last 15 years, things have changed a lot. We got married, had, like you said, 4 kids and another one on the way. And, we're in a season right now of it's very active, very fun, but we have to
Mm-hmm.
be intentional about how we spend our time and make sure we're getting the most out of it because it can, as busy as we are, it can get very easy to just kind of go through the motions and, it's a very fun time right now. The family life is going well, and we're staying very busy. And agriculture, like you said, I work at Logan Ag Service, and we're in agriculture. And right now we are gearing up for planting season, so it is our busy time of year for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Faith based. My journey with Christ started out as a very young age, and it's always been a part of my life. It's had its ebbs and flows,
Mm-hmm.
where I maybe didn't want to listen to what God had to say or the direction that He was pushing me to go down. But He always found a way to pull me back onto that path that He had set for me. And I'm sure we'll dive into that a little bit more as we continue
Yeah,
talking.
I definitely want to dive into that because I do believe that there's these epic events or these moments in our lives that we think are the worst moments ever, but they're the course correction moments. But I want to dive into like the work side and the family life, and obviously they're not separate; they're integrated. But what was the original reason why you came into even Summit? Like, how did you come into that? What was the problem? Was there a problem when you joined? Like, what was going
I,
on?
I think so. That would have been in 2020 when Mark and I first started talking. So actually, my journey down personal development started in late 2017, early 2018.
Okay.
In 2017, we had our first daughter. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I found myself in a situation where I was asking myself, what's next for
Mm-hmm.
my life? I was really living a non-purpose driven lifestyle. It was just kind of whatever the situation came about.
Mm-hmm.
We had a great relationship, had a great family, but I was not intentional about what I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
for our family, for myself personally, or for business. And so I found, I can't remember, where it even began, but the question was posed to me that, my daughter's going to marry somebody who resembles her father. And that kind of really hit me at that point in time, as a, relatively new dad. I had a son at that point in time. He was
Mm-hmm.
3.
Mm-hmm.
But having a daughter is different for a dad, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of set off on a path of discovering, what I wanted for, for my daughter. And she was going to resemble that in the way that I carried out my actions, in the way that I behaved. So I really took a dive into personal development through a lot of different avenues. It became an obsession almost to become the best version of myself that I could become.
Yep.
I've stumbled many times along the way over the last 6 years
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Um, but that was kind of the first step into it. And Summit came about. Mark was working with Verdesian Life Science, which was
Mm-hmm.
a company that we moved some of their products for.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my coworkers was out at one of their events and met him, and he came back and goes, "Hey, you have to meet this guy. This is exactly
Yeah.
what we've been talking about." So from 18 to 20, we were trying to put a plan in place for a business that was intentional about where we were trying to go. And the guy that was at the meeting actually was the perfect one to make the connection, because he aligned with my thinking, and that we needed to grow personally in
Mm-hmm.
order to grow as a business. And so,
Yeah.
one thing led to another, and I ended up at uh, Omaha in 2021, I guess it would be.
Yeah. That was the first year at Summit when I met you, right?
Yep, yep, it was.
Yeah.
That was my first adventure with the Summit team. So
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And okay, so I love that you said what's next. Yeah, I think so many of us hit that point, and certainly I know a lot of the listeners relate to it. And that is like the looming question: what's next? Is this all there is? Like, what is all of this for? And I love that because you hear that all the time. Like, what's your why? What's your reason? What's your purpose? And it's so hard, but sometimes it's always the purpose is right in front of us. Like the purpose
right,
is, do I want my daughter to marry this version of a man? Do I want her
right,
to date this? Because this is what I always say, we repeat what we experience. And I often say that to the men, especially, is like, you're the first love of your daughter. Like she is learning what it means to be a woman, to be loved, to be cared for by how you are as a man, how you treat her, and also how she's watching you treat her mom, right? And so this
yep,
is the model. It's like, and so I love that you asked yourself that question when she was still young
right, yeah,
and made that the starting point for the growth, right? The inner growth. And I think that's such a huge question because it's like, would I want my son to marry a version of me? Like it really makes you think twice, right? So I love that. And I think that that's just I wanted to go back to that because I think a lot of people that struggle with their question, they're looking for this like big thing to come out. The skies are going to part. God is going to send this audible down. And it's like, Josh, your purpose is to do this. And it's like, if we can steward well what's in our hands, like how's my wife doing? How's my daughter doing? How's my son doing? How's what's in my hands doing so that he can increase you even more? That's the whole point. So were you all ready? Because you guys have done some amazing things with the team culture. Okay. So I want to start with that, but then I want to kind of go back to like what pulled you in because I'm telling you, like we've worked with a lot of companies and I know that you work more with Mark with the group, but we've done live events together and we've really seen you like implement things that were not popular mainstream that most companies were doing the opposite of because
yeah,
you were really committed to the culture changing people. So if I was to ask you, like, you really seem to value your people as greatest assets, right? Like what is
yeah.
your psychology around team development, team culture, like, right? Because there's so much chasing the bottom, the profit or the taking care of the customers, but not really investing in our people. It's always viewed as a cost. People are terrified to do it. And I've seen you do something really different.
Yes, yeah, we have. So um, in 2018, like I said, that was really kind of the start of the change from a personal and from a business standpoint. We really decided we wanted to be intentional about where we were going. We had a conversation with the owner, and the statement was made, "Hey, we're not selling the business, so we have to make sure that we keep growing." And so,
Mm-hmm.
we took the approach of, why do we want to grow? And we really started breaking down our core values and what the business stood for. And
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it wasn't about, making more money, but it was about making a bigger impact. And when this
Mm-hmm.
company was founded by, Jim Logan, it was um, very much service oriented for the community and very community based. And, when I look back on my journey with Logan Ag, early on, it was very, self-centered focus. How can I make more money? How can I grow my career? How can I become a better me, or
Mm-hmm.
what's in it for me at the end of the day?
Mm-hmm.
And through a course of events in 2020, I reshaped my thought process and looking at things for, not what can I benefit, but how can I benefit others? And
Mm.
the meaning of life in 2020 really took a different turn for me, and that in turn allowed us to make a lot of different changes here, because my focus became not how do I make more money, or not how do I further my career, but it became more how do I impact the lives of everybody around me. And I'll be honest, there were days where I had considered doing other things,
Yeah.
but when the question was constantly being asked to me, and it was a God thing. He was constantly asking me, where can you make the biggest impact? And at the end of the day, it was right here where I had the opportunity to make the biggest impact. We had 50 plus, team members working for us. That was 50 lives. We had, 3 to 4 different communities we were working in. And I really took the approach of, if we can impact the lives of everybody in our company, we can grow the company, we can grow the locations in which we're at, we can impact the lives of the community. And agriculture is a very tight knit community, right? It's very relationship driven, and every place that we operate is in a small rural community.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times the resources are minimal in those communities. And so I I think God just called me at that time to really put the focus on growing our people, growing in the locations that we can make the biggest impact in. And that's really the approach that we took. I didn't have a clue how we were going to get there or what we were
Yeah.
going to do to get there.
Yeah.
It was just like little steps here and there, and that was what allowed us post COVID to make the change that really shifted our culture, from a hiring and our structure of pay. And I had listened to I was running a lot at that time, and so I listened to a lot of books. And I was
Mm-hmm.
listening to a book, and the guy was talking about how he basically had implemented a new standard minimum wage at their company,
Mm-hmm.
and that was not something that was very typical of ag. We were going against people who were paying, at that time, 12, 14, $15 an hour. If you've been there a long time, sure, maybe you were making $18 an hour. But we knew that we had to do more. I had a team member come in, and it was right after COVID. This would have been 2020, late 21. No, it would have been 2022. Sorry.
Yeah.
And he came in, and he kind of just looked, broken. He said, I need some money. I got to make
Mm.
a car payment.
Mm.
And, that hurt me. I was like, how are we doing all of these things, and we've got people who can't, make ends meet? And it was a difficult time, in the economy. And so I put together this plan, and it was very out in left field. And when I proposed it, I had a lot of blank stares, in the
Yeah.
room. But fortunately, when I took it to the owner, he said, 100%. If you think you can pull this off and we can make this work, we can provide for our people, go do it. And so he gave me the freedom to put it in place. And um, the rest is kind of history from that standpoint. It really changed the direction of our company, and it allowed our people to know that at the end of the day, we care about who we
Mm-hmm.
work with, and we care about
Mm-hmm.
their families and making sure that they're able to provide
Mm-hmm.
for their families. And it really allowed us to bring in really high quality people. And that's not to say we don't have our issues. Every day
Yeah.
we're working through different issues, but
Yeah.
I think our team knows that at the end of the day, when they're in a bind, that they can come to us, and we care. And I mean, it's a family owned and operated business for 60, 62 years, 63 years now, and we operate by those core values.
Which
And
are
I think
what?
so. Our loyalty, going the extra mile, being accountable, service, above and beyond,
Mhm.
integrity are our main five core values. And at the end of the day, it's just doing right. Do the right thing. It's the number one core value. Do the right thing. And
Do the right thing.
sometimes it's so easy that it's hard.
I
It's so
know, right?
simple. Yeah. But and that's what I always tell the guys. Even do the right thing, even when it makes your voice shake. Even
Yeah.
when it doesn't make the company money, do the right thing. And so I think that in
Say
a
that
world
again.
where
Say that again because that's worth repeating, both those statements.
do the right thing, even when it makes your voice shake, and do the right thing, even if it loses the company money.
Yeah.
Um, because I think if our customers know that we're going to take care of them, our people know we're going to take care of them, I ultimately believe that that will pay dividends in the long run.
Yes.
It might not make us money today, but in the long term, it will. Because in a world where it seems like doing the right thing is the abnormality, um, I think that culture is starting to change. So
Totally. And not only is it a universal law, like the law of reciprocity, you take care of people, they take care of you. That's just like in the fabric of our universe. It is a biblical principle, it's a biblical law of just take care of those I've entrusted you with. Like our mandate is to multiply and prosper, not just externally, but the people that we have. And so I love that because it is a law. And um so the catalyst was really that guy coming. Was that the catalyst? The guy coming and saying, we can't afford our car payment, which by the way, like our people cannot be thriving. Like when we're in reptilian survival mode, like your brain is so focused on just staying alive and feeding your family. Like how can anybody optimize and produce at the top level when all they're worried about is how do I get from here to there, put food on the table? Like, and this is the tension. And I think you just said it of like, we got to do the right thing, even when it doesn't make sense sometimes, because I would bet you most companies have integrity as one of their corporate values, right? But it's like, what does that even mean? And I think we have to really define what that means because I always say like inner civil war ensues when we're living out of integrity with our values. We say, okay, this is our value, do the right thing, but not if it costs the company money, not if it like whatever, right? And so I just think, was that the catalyst for that change, or was it like a combination of all the things dropping at the same time?
I think there was a combination of a lot of things dropping at the same time, but I think that was the final straw for me.
Mm-hmm.
We had a couple of other conversations that probably took place within the same week.
Yeah.
And this had been a concept that I had been tossing around in my head for probably, I don't know, maybe a year. At
Mm-hmm.
that point in time, where I was like, okay, maybe this isn't the right time to do this. Maybe this isn't the right industry to try to do this in. Um, but at the end of the day, there was a couple of different catalysts, but that one was the kind of the final straw where it was just
Yeah.
like, if we're able to do this and we're making money, and that obviously we've got to make money to keep the company viable.
Sure.
But I just felt like, to your point, if people are not worrying about how they're going to make a car payment or a house payment or send their kids to school or the grocery bill, if they're not worried about those things, they're going to be a better individual. And
Yeah.
I think if we're all bringing our best selves to work every day, then we're going to have a better company at the end of the day. And so yeah, that was the do the right thing piece really kind of manifested when we sat down and we told everybody we're dumping $1 million back into our payroll.
Okay, say
And
that again. We're dumping $1 million back into payroll because you didn't just raise
yeah,
minimum wage. Didn't you like significantly start to pay people more money?
yeah, yep. So we
Uh,
significantly raised, essentially we just said the new standard of living is $60,000 or more at our company. And, that meant everybody got a pretty good raise at that point in time. But the total dollar amount was we invested $1 million back into the current team that we had. And I think that really showed our team that, hey, these core values aren't just the sign that's on the wall. This company does care about me and my future, and providing opportunities for me to grow and expand. And at the time, pre COVID and pre 2018, when we had a really set down and set our vision out for where we were going, and we were a one location company, and 30, 35, 39 team members. And there was kind of a glass ceiling on what kind of
yeah.
growth from a career standpoint you could have if you wanted to, move up the chain, the ladder, for
Mm.
lack of a better word. And when we sat down and set these new targets and directions in 2018, and it provided people with a big vision, um, that they could fit theirs inside of. And I'm gonna probably not credit the right person, but I'm pretty sure it's Ed Milet who said a bunch of times that I've heard him say that you have to have a vision that's big enough for everybody else's vision to fit inside of yours.
Yes.
And that really
Yes.
hit home with me when I heard him say that. And it just became, more evident that we can't play small. We have to continue to provide more opportunities. If people feel like they're being taken care of and they feel like they're respected and they feel like they have an opportunity to grow, I felt like we were going to get the best of our team at the end of the day.
Yes. I hear that all the time. I say it all the time. And I'm glad you said it was at my leg, because I also was like, where did I first hear that? But it's so true, right? If people come and they're like, well, there's a cap here for me, they always got one foot out, right? Thinking about, okay, this is a stepping stone to my next thing. I was having a conversation with someone the other day that was, same thing, was like, had created such an entrepreneurial almost culture inside of their company where everybody can realize their dreams, by being part of the bigger dream or the bigger vision. And that's a great question, is like, is our vision, first of all, do we even know what our vision is? Okay.
Yeah.
Y'all listening, like Josh said, they revisited their values. You revisited your values. You talked about the vision. You looked at where the current vision was capped. And I think we have to keep revisiting the vision, right? Like, we're always being called to, yes, we're evolving, but we're creationists. Okay. We create. First, we have to decide what we're creating, and then we get about the creation process. And I always, like, we die a slow death when we stop creating, when we stop being connected to the dream, the visions, and taking that time to go back. So you said vision, you said values, you said standards. I mean, this is part of our cultural language all the time. I know Mark and I are always like, and our clients are so sick of hearing it. They're like, I don't want to talk about vision and values and standards anymore. But it is the stuff. It's like the core
It is.
ingredients. You raise the standards, you raise the quality of people you attract, you raise the vision, you create an atmosphere where more people want to stick around. And this is it. These are the two things I hear the most. So I want you to speak to these two things and feel free to break them down. Number one, okay, Josh, must be nice. You guys have $1 million able to be dumped back into payroll, but we don't have that kind of money just sitting around. Number two, and on top of it, good people are really hard to attract. In today's market, it's impossible to attract good people. Go. What do
Yeah.
you say
So
about
we
those
didn't.
two things?
So we didn't have $1 million to invest back into payroll either. And it wasn't like we were sitting on a pile of cash at the end of the day. It was, okay, so we're going to do this. Where's it going to come from? And so
Mm-hmm.
we had to figure out how are we going to, we just broke it down. Okay, here's where we want to get to. What's it going to take? And we worked the problem backwards. And we said, okay, we've got to come up with $1 million. Where are we going to come up with that at? And we operate businesses across a lot of different avenues. It's not just ag, trucking, fuel, crop protection, seed, all different, methods of resources or revenue that comes in. And so we just figured out, where do we need to take and add a little bit extra margin? Where can we cut maybe some fat that we didn't necessarily need to have? And so we just figured it out. To my comment earlier, where we knew where we wanted to go, but we didn't have any idea how we were going to get there. I think that is the catalyst for growth, when you can really understand that, at the end of the day, I have no idea how this is going to happen, but God's called me to do this, and He'll take care of the how. I just have to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And when we started down that path and we started doing the work, that was our most profitable year we'd ever had as a
Woo!
company.
Come on now.
From a margin standpoint, net income, that was the most profitable year we'd ever had. And we didn't
Wow.
know when we started that year how we were going to come up with it. We just knew we knew that we were supposed to.
Okay, that's
So
huge. At the beginning of the year, you make this decision. You have no idea where the money is going to come from. You don't have the how, but you have the what. And you
yeah,
have the commitment and the decision and the trust to go, okay, we're going to take this step by step. And it ends up being your most profitable year ever.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's contributed to a couple different reasons. Obviously, God had a big plan there, right?
Yeah.
He wanted us to make a difference in the lives of our people. Um, but it just allowed us to bring in a really high caliber level of people into our company. So to your second point
Mm-hmm.
about, everybody in the marketplace is struggling to take care, to find people. And what we found is that we've got people that want to come to us. And, you know,
Attractor factor.
yes. And so we created an environment. And like I said, we don't get it right all the time, but we certainly try
No.
to. But we can create an environment where people want to come and work with us. They wanted to, they heard the buzz about what we were trying to do and the way we were doing things a little bit different and the way that we value our people and the way we value our customers. And, when we weren't paying $15 an hour, and now we were paying, 60 or whatever plus, depending on what your position and skill set was, it allowed us to go fishing in different pools, right? So we weren't just attracting a minimum wage person who maybe just didn't have a lot of skill set at the time, but it allowed us to bring in people who were, um, veteran to that industry or had maybe 10 or 12 years and just felt like they were underpaid and underappreciated. And we were able to pay them and show them that we appreciated them and provide them an avenue for growth if they wanted it. Um, and I think that at the end of the day, when a lot of industries, not just ag, but a lot of industries were struggling to get people, it was because people didn't feel like they were valued. They didn't feel important, and we were able to capture a lot of really talented people. And when you start putting
Yeah.
really talented people around each other, they start to thrive and they start to feed off of
Momentum,
each
right? It's
other.
like the
It's,
flywheel is going.
it's 1+1 = 3, and really that was what we did in that year. Was we just created a lot of buzz, we created a lot of momentum, we created a lot of buy-in for our team. Everybody worked harder, everybody, because they knew that they were all in on it together, and that's when it gets fun for me, right? That's what I enjoy, is seeing people grow and expand themselves and
And it's
push
exponential.
themselves.
Like it's exponential. Smart. I always say, like, when we do it our way, 1+1 is 2. But when we do it God's way, it's like 1+1 is 3, 6, 9. And we start playing in multiplication instead of addition. And that's really also, I wanted to have this interview with you because I was like, he's doing it. He's doing it a different way, and he's seeing the exponential increase. The conversations are different. He's got because I'm seeing the divide, right? I'm having these other conversations over here where people are pulling their hair out, profits are drying up. Where's the money? Where are the people? It's such a lack. It's such a scarcity. It's like grasping, it's neediness and desperation versus getting really clear. This is what I mean, you guys, in my language, I guess, this is what I call about consciously, intentionally creating versus reacting to external factors. Because if I was to ask you how much of your focus, if you give me a percentage, was internally focused, like internally on you as a leader, internally on your team, your staff, versus externally, what's happening in the economy, what's happening in the world, what's happening in our industry, where I see a lot of people really spending like 98% of their time there and like 2% in internal. What would you say? Do you like give me a percentage wise?
I bet during that time from 2020 until 2023, I was probably spending 90% of my focus on the team, the growth, the individual, and probably 10% worrying about the economy. But I had a great team around me that was focusing on those things. So it wasn't that we as a company weren't thinking about
Yeah.
those things. I just had a team around me that allowed me to put the energy into the things that really drove me and really drove the business, from a personnel standpoint. And so I was spending the majority of my time, those 3 years focusing on the internal and how to
Yeah.
get the internal right.
I think that's so important. Like we need to hear this, right? Because we think, oh shoot, I got to go chase the next client, chase the next deal, react to what's happening outside. And also it opened up your bandwidth to do what was in your core genius.
Yeah.
I love to ask people that leader, like, are you doing the stuff that's in your core genius? Obviously you did some awesome work with it. What is your top 3 core genius? Josh's talents.
So I really think I'm just starting to get into that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what really allows me to thrive and feel like I'm in my element is where I'm focusing on, building teams, building company, expanding the growth. But I feel like probably one of my strong points is just my ability to problem solve and think outside the box. That comes with its own set of challenges. where everybody brings their problems to you. Um, but that is
Yeah.
one thing that I do get in fulfillment out of is finding a problem, figuring out a way to solve it. And oftentimes it is solving it by looking outside of the box from what's standard or what the industry says you should do, or those kinds of things. But that's where I really enjoy it. I feel like my cup is full when I'm building teams for the future, looking down the road as far as what we're trying to accomplish. Um, and that's really what fills me up. Yeah, the day to day stuff, the grind, that I take care of that plenty as well, but that's not where my genius is, I would say.
No, but when you're in it, this is how you came up with that solution. And again, it may have
Yeah,
dropped, right? It dropped into your ears during a run, audiobook, whatever you're reading. But there's a lot of people, and I'll raise my hand too. We go for runs, we spin, we do whatever. We eat books, like we consume content, podcast, books, but then there's no implementation, there's no integration. So I always say, like, you've got to create before you just consume more stuff, because otherwise you get so full, it's like you're sick with all this information that you're not acting on, and like that's horrible too, right? It's like, great, am I just feeding myself, or am I allowing myself to be a vessel where this stuff actually goes in me, through me, out to the people? I
yeah,
always say, like, a great leader is like, you're so well fed, you take the meat and then you feed your people. You don't just go, okay, give me some more, and it's all about me, me, me. So I know that I want to go back to what you were saying about, like, 6 years ago. Well, you've had a series of maybe life-changing events. What was, like, did you have a definitive moment? I know you had a, a life-changing moment with your daughter, but what really started to change and shape you at a soul level to be less about Josh and the ego, and really about leader, people, like doing it totally different? What was there, a moment, an event?
yeah. So and I referenced 2020 a couple times. So um, the real life changing, obviously, my daughter Liv being born was the first thing that even got me to looking at expanding
Mm-hmm.
my own perspective and viewpoints. But in 2020, I had been very focused on personal growth, personal development. I just completed my first marathon, and then my wife was pregnant with our third at the time, and it was a normal pregnancy. Everything was going as per expected. And she woke up on actually April 1st, so 4 years ago today, and she was bleeding. And so we went to the hospital, and we didn't think too much of it necessarily because it was very similar to how Liv, our second
Mm-hmm.
daughter, or our second child, came into the world. And so we went, they hooked her up, everything was fine. And we didn't think anything of it. And about an hour and a half in, there was a drop in her blood pressure and
Mm-hmm.
her pulse, and then it popped right back up. And so we're like, okay, well, that was weird. So the doctor came in, and he decided that maybe the baby was under stress, and we should maybe move this along a little bit. And my wife, she had that motherly instinct and intuition, and she had felt like bleeding up to that week that you know Penelope was just moving a little less than she had normally been moving, and so she felt the urge to get to the doctor, get the process underway. And you know, God bless her soul, she's the strongest woman I've ever met in my life. Actually, she's probably the strongest person I've ever met in my entire life. But she delivered that baby with no medicine, no nothing, in about 4 pushes because she knew something was wrong. And
Mm.
so Penelope was born. They went to hand her to her, and she said, "No, something's wrong. Take her, take her, take her." And so over the course of the next 54 minutes, they were working on her, and you know, got that conversation that no dad or mom wants to have. And the doctor came over, and they said she'd passed. And so, we went from, the happiest day, where we thought we were going to come home with a third child to, uh, figuring out what the next steps were. And,
Mm.
and that was a hard time for us, obviously, going through that and trying to figure out, why, asking a lot of questions, why did God do this? What was the purpose of this? And, ultimately at the end of the day, I always knew that it happened for a reason. God had a plan and a purpose. And so sitting in that hospital that day, my wife and I both decided, this isn't just going to be a situation where we lost a child and we just move on from it. We're going to do something about it, and
Yes.
we're going to make sure that her memory lives on, some way, shape, or form. We didn't know what that meant at the time. We just knew that it wasn't going to be for nothing, that we weren't going to go through that pain and not have a silver lining on the other end.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
there was a course of months of going through that grieving process, the different cycles of it, and ultimately it led me to have a different appreciation for life, and also like God just reminded me that, hey, just even though you think things are always going great, don't get too caught up in your own plan. I've still got bigger plans for you, and
Mm-hmm.
that one was one that constantly comes back to my mind for me. It was just, God's got a plan, and might not always be on my timeline or what I think I want it to be, but he's got something bigger at work, and it's ultimately going to be bigger than anything I can come up with on my own. And so that just, that thought process allowed me to really start thinking bigger about life, and that it was more than just, going through the motions and doing the things I think I'm supposed to do because that's what, so and so did before me, or that's what the the social media says we should do. It just it brought me to a different place where I had a different appreciation for my purpose on this life, and that I was made to do something more than just exist. And so that's when we really started focusing on what does that mean? How can we grow and become better individuals? And how can we take this tragedy and help other people? Um, I, as a man, I'm not very good at sharing my emotions. It's not one of my favorite things to do. But through the course of that process, God showed Himself in multiple different ways. Because I wasn't one to just reach out to talk to people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was the kind of stuff it down and I'll be strong and we'll work through it kind of guy. And I was on an onboarding call for a coaching group or one of the programs that I was in, and just so happened to be that dad, that was a guy, and the dad, and he went through a very similar process 5 years earlier, I think. And so, it was somebody I'd never talked to before, didn't even really know who they were.
Yeah.
And God put him on that call with me at that point in time to allow me to vent and, um, feel my emotions. And that was awesome. And a weight was lifted. And then we decided we were going to do something bigger, so that
Mm-hmm.
her memory would live on. And so we created a nonprofit organization called Penelope's Path. And in the process of setting all of that up and working through attorneys and accountants, the accountant had gone through a very similar situation a few years prior to that also. So
Wow.
so God was just putting people in my life that I needed to
Mm-hmm.
talk to at the time when I needed to talk to them, and that allowed me to grieve and go through that process
Mm-hmm.
and really move forward and allow that opportunity, allow that tragedy to turn into something for good at the end of the
Yeah.
day. And so we've used, we do an event every year, and we've raised money for kids to go to a local Christian school, kids that don't have the means to go to a private school. We've done scholarships. We've sponsored a school in Haiti. We've done some boxes for other grieving families. And so really just trying to put ourselves out there to be a resource for other people that have gone through similar experiences.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. The tragedy, God doesn't waste anything. God doesn't waste anything if we don't waste it, And I just love that. That is such a powerful story of just because you can become so hardened, you can become so angry and cynical and actually reject God and run the total opposite way. Like if He loved you, why would He do this to you? And yet you use this as an opportunity. God uses all things for good for those who love Him, right? And it's like you
Yeah.
use this as a path to heal yourself, to heal others, to create opportunities for others, and really to open your eyes and now changing the lives of people inside of the organization that you lead. And again, who even knows what God's ultimate plan is, Like we can't see all the steps ahead. He's got this heavenly view, but it's so beautiful. And it obviously sounds like it deepened your faith
Yeah.
instead of corrupting your faith.
Yeah.
What did it do to your faith in your marriage? Like,
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, there were days where I was
Of
angry at
course.
God and asking
Yeah.
him questions why. But at the root of it, my wife and I both were grew up through faith. So we both had a good, strong family roots and values and belief in God and what His plan was. And so both of us really had the approach of, you know, this doesn't make sense right now, and it's not going to make sense, and we're going to go through, the struggles and the tears and
Yeah.
the ups and downs. But we know that He's got a plan for us. But again, we didn't know what the plan was. We just knew that He had a plan, and it wasn't going to be for no reason. And so, it brought us closer together during those times where we were, just be a shoulder to cry on um, and move forward together as a family. And that was one thing we always wanted to make sure. We never, even with our kids, it didn't, obviously Asen was young and Liv was very young, and now Reddick, he doesn't know any better, but he went and saw
Hmm.
his sister's grave yesterday and put flowers out, and or Saturday, I guess it was,
Yeah.
and so it was always, we wanted to talk about her like she was still here and part of our family, and you know, but the faith was deepened in that I knew that God's plan was just bigger.
Yeah.
And that sounds cliche. I know it sounds cliche at times, but going through that tragedy, it took it from just words to feelings for me, and I felt that in my heart that there was a bigger purpose in life. And I began to continue to dig into myself even deeper in our relationship. My wife and I, and our family, and everything just became um, more important, more amplified, and had
Yeah.
more value. And so, when I was looking at, I always created a word of the year, and then 2021, the year after, was impact. And how can I make an impact? And that was the year that we started to do things differently as a
Hmm.
company. And then my word for 2022 was action. And so, you were talking earlier about, I take it in and then I create action. I had to create a process to where I was forcing myself to take action, because I can be very um, passive in that sometimes. And so I created that word of the year. And Mark always talks about, be careful what words you pick, because
Yeah.
God's going to reveal that to you.
We always
And,
know our word this
and,
year is supernatural unity. So get
yep.
ready.
Yep. And so, and I knew that going into it. And so I knew that there was going to be a lot of action that had to take place. And so when it was put in front of me, when God put the plan out there to do Penelope's path, or to do, the different things we've done with inside of our organization, I knew that He was putting them there for a reason, and that it was my
Yeah.
time to take action
And
on
I
it.
really want to say that you're absolutely right. We choose the word when I talk a lot about declaring into the atmosphere. We got to declare into the atmosphere that which we want to create. And then we raise the standard, and then we're always called. You got to create the infrastructure. And we didn't really talk about it, but as we start to kind of bring this thing in for a landing, I don't know when you started this, but I know, obviously we knew each other from the events, and um, I love that you're always really engaged with the guided visualizations and stuff. So high five on that. The overflow. We did this awesome one a few years back. I think you were there when we did the guided visualization of being under the waterfall,
Yeah.
and like the love of God and like the blessings and the abundance pouring, and you being so saturated that it was pouring out of you. And I remember you really like being engaged with that. It's a guided visualization, but it's a different way to pray and a different way to receive. And I really saw the manifestation of that
Yeah.
in your life. Like, the overflow is coming out of you. But you also created infrastructure afterwards, because when you did a couple rounds of 75 hard too, where maybe you were running, but I saw you really tighten up the self-discipline.
Yeah.
And I just want you to speak to that for a moment, because I think we all want the next level or the bigger thing. And I want to make sure that I'm doing these, I'm tapping into a couple of different things. So we talked about faith, we talked about leadership. Now we're talking about self-discipline, because the next version always requires a little bit tighter structure,
Yeah.
right? So that you can. So when did you start that? What's the self-discipline regimen? What did that do
Yeah.
for you?
So, and and actually, the event and the waterfall and the dropping of the armor, actually, that was probably the final phase for me in the grieving process, was that week at Summit with you guys. So I want to give you and Mark the proper
Oh,
appreciation for that, because I that was a year, just over a year at that point, I think, when we'd been there, and I was still harboring just the
anger.
anger, and so that
Okay,
really
plug for that. That was the Drop the Armor book that's coming out June 3rd, you guys.
didn't even
Uh,
mean to do.
yeah, I came in there, but dropping the armor is exactly that. It's releasing and shedding the last of anything that we are still holding on to that is weighing us down. And so actually in that book, the practice that Josh is talking about, not the waterfall one, but the dropping of the armor was something else I took these guys through in person, and it is really powerful when you do
Yeah,
it, right? So I'm
it
glad
was.
that you brought that up, because did
Yeah.
you feel yourself release the weight, move forward lighter?
Yep, definitely it was, and it was a big turning point for really the next phase of growth for me as an individual and for us as a company too. So
Come
habits,
on.
yes, habits, discipline. Um, so I did my first. So I go back to 2018 and implemented a process, a daily process, very similar to what Mark talks about with this Thrive with Five, and core four and body, and your body being balanced, business, kind of having a structure around those four main key areas. And um, I was challenged to, what's your biggest story about yourself, and then go into work on, destroying that story. At the time, I was new to personal development, but I knew that I hated running. I absolutely hated it when I was a kid. Grew up doing sports. I could do sports all day long, but if I had to just run, I wasn't a fan. And so my story was, I'm not a runner. And I'm like, that's an easy one, because I can check it off. I can see the progress. And so I began running, and that first run was a miserable run. But it just allowed me to, at the end of it, was like, man, I feel better for doing something, And
Mhm.
so I really be I ran a half marathon in 2019, and I ran the full marathon in 2020, right before losing Penelope. And that was really what kind of stemmed the catalyst for our event that we have, where we do a month. You kind of pledge your miles for how many miles you want to rock. We called it 5K a day, and paid for paving Penelope's path. And so I ran a 5K a day every day in June following her passing. And that really was where a lot of my um, breakthroughs came, really on the road, where I was just, you know, by myself, and listening to Christian music, or listening to a book, or whatever the case may be. So that really shaped
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
direction a lot. But yeah, so 75 hard. I did my first 75 hard in 2019, and I failed in 2020. But I got out of it what I needed to, because I was in a rut. I
Mhm.
was in a difficult place with dealing with the loss, and so that allowed me to get back. And what it allowed me to do was see that, okay, hey, when you're putting in the work, the results will come from it. And so at every point and juncture in my life when things have been going good, it's been when I've been intentional about my habits, my discipline. And I can pinpoint every time where things have gone, south, or not been going good. It's been when I've become lax on my habits or my disciplines. And really, this last phase, last year, I was in a bit of a just kind of in a bit of funk. I wasn't doing what I knew I needed to do, and it was kind of getting me down. And Mark goes, "You know what you need to do," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know what I need to do."
You know what you need to do.
I'm like, I don't
We
know that I
always know what
want
we
to do
need to
it.
do. We just don't want to do it.
Yeah, I know, Mark. Thanks for that. I know, but
Yeah.
and so I think he had just maybe finished 75 hard too. So I did it again, and so I completed 75 hard last year, and just rolled right into phase one for another 30 days, and then I took 30 days off and did phase two again after that. So um, what it what I think it allowed me to do was more lead from the front. And when I was going through the motions, I think my team saw that as an opportunity to go through the motions as well, and the people around me. And then, you know, I think there's a lot of times where we don't think people are watching, and they're always watching. And so I've had a lot of people over the years that have said, you know, and I'm not very active on social. I post a little bit here and there, and
Mhm.
I'll post my runs and things like that. But
Mhm.
I've had a lot of people who have come up to me and say, I appreciate you sharing your journey, it's got me walking, it's got me doing this. And so I think it's an obligation for us as leaders and in situations where we're leading people to show those things, the hard things and the good things, because it allows them to know that they're not alone. There's other people going through that journey, and it gives them the space to be able to do, what they think they need to do or what they're called to do. And
Mm-hmm.
so, my discipline has been, every day I do something physical, try to move my body, try to listen to podcasts, read books, something on the personal development side every day. I try to pray, daily, and then from business goals, setting business targets, and then family goals. Try to set intentional time with my kids, and um, you know it always feels like the buzzword of the day is balance, and I don't know where you stand on balance, but I've come to a long time. I thought, oh, I need to be balanced more. That'll make me
Yeah.
happier.
No.
And what I found was it didn't make me happier, nor did it make my relationships
Mm-hmm.
better or anything better. But what I found that works for me, and it's probably different for everybody else, but what I found is that be where you are. And so if I'm home, I'm with my kids and with my wife, and trying to be as intentional at that time as I can. When I'm at work, I'm intentional about the time I'm spending at work. And when I always make time for myself in the morning to run or lift or whatever, I'm intentional with that time. And the more intention I give to it, the more benefit I seem to get out of it at the end of the day. And it just doesn't mean I mess up quite a bit often, and it's easy to get scrolling on Instagram or something. But
Totally.
um, just try to make time and try to be intentional about my time, and
Yeah.
and that's where I become balanced. Sometimes it's 70-30, work home, but on the weekends when
Yeah.
I'm not having to be at work, it's 100%,
Yeah.
focused on the kids and the family. So
Yeah.
just being where my feet are.
That's it. Amen to that. I agree. I think we need to throw this idea of balance out the window, because the balance automatically puts things on a scale doing this with each other. And you're like always trying to, and it's not, it's 100% wherever you are, just be there 100% all in, and then go be somewhere else. So I'm so happy to hear that. I want to just pluck this word of like work life balance right out the window, because it's stressing people out. And we're not here to measure everything. We just want to be more present. I mean, scattered focus, scattered energy is, and our energy is our creation power. It's like we create from our energy. So if you are feeling like I'm not creating anything, I'm just spinning my wheels all the time, I would ask, where's your focus? Because where focus goes, energy flows.
Yeah.
And if you don't have all your energy there for whatever you're doing, whether it's a sales call, a date night, kid time, you're not creating any depth of memory. I mean, there's so much around this, but there's so much gold in this podcast, you guys. Today, I want to thank you, Josh, for being here. I mean, we talked about setting values and standards and valuing our people, like focusing on the inside out approach to growing a business that's honestly counterintuitive. Like for a lot of people, it's opposite of what the world says. I really believe that the right relationships create revenue. I always say in heaven, the streets we walk on gold, the people are the currency of heaven. So if we invest in the currency of people, like we get to walk on streets of gold, because money is a byproduct. Sustainable growth and sustainable increase is a byproduct of focusing on the right things. And at the end of the day, nobody's on their deathbed wishing they had more stuff. They wish they had more moments, more people, more memories, more experiences, more joy. And these are the things of above, right? When we focus on those things, everything else is added to us. And I know it's hard to wrap your head around it until you start to see the evidence of you doing it. Sometimes you just got to get out there and do it so that you can have a new experience. So as we leave, you answer this a couple different ways, but many people are at these crossroads going, what's next? What's next? What's next? I've been going through the motions. I'm losing the love for my job. I'm losing the love for my people. I'm losing the love for my wife. I hear that one a lot. I've been busting, going through the things, building my empire, the kingdom, the business. And they're kind of like, this isn't working for me anymore. Right? Like, where do I go from here? What do I do? I mean, you gave so many great insights, but what's the one thing you would drop into that man or woman's ears that has been building a life, building a success, an identity, probably in their role or their title or their business, and now they're going like, I can't keep doing it this way. Something's got to give, but I'm afraid that if I do something else, I'm going to lose everything over here that I just spent my life building.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, at the end of the day, looking back on the last several years of this journey, it's God calls us to be more than what we are. He created us to be examples, to be leaders, to be builders. Um, and I think that just in today's society, we just get really comfortable being comfortable. And anytime we can put ourselves outside of our comfort zone and grow, it's gonna provide us the opportunity to get where we want to go. So I mean, everybody's situations are different, and you got to find your purpose, and that process of finding your purpose is different for everybody. Um, and I think if you allow yourself to open up, and, God's going to show you what that path looks like. But then the biggest piece of all of it is none of it happens and none of it works if you don't do the work and put the action
Yeah.
behind it. So, I mean, a lot of different directions we could go with that, but I just think when God calls you to do something, go
Yeah.
and take action and move, and He'll take care of the rest.
Even if your voice is shaking and
Even
even if it's going to cost you money, follow the path because God's path doesn't make sense to
yep,
our logical mind. That's
yep,
such a perfect thing. When God calls you, do the thing. I really, I double down on that. I do know that the blessing is on the other side of obedience. The door doesn't open until you walk through it, in a way. So that's awesome. Josh, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being in the conversation. I want to honor your time. You guys, if you enjoyed the show, I would love for you to pass this on. I know a lot of you are in leadership positions. And I want to say this, you don't need to be the CEO of a company or the founder of a company. You're a leader if you have a family, if you're leading yourself, even if it's just you, you're always leading, right? And if we lead well where we are, lead ourselves well, we lead our children, we lead our husbands, our wives, everything else gets added onto us. So it is an internal game. If this impacted you in any way, share it, hit forward, share this with a friend, leave us a review. And if you guys want to learn more about our coaching programs, either our leadership summit, the roundtable, Mark and I are coming out with some really awesome things to support you guys in the process. And we're launching something new together where we'll be leading the mastermind together. So if you want to learn more about coaching, mentorship, follow the link below, book a call. Until next time, here's to loving fiercely, leading courageously. We will see you in the next episode.